Hello everyone, Britt here from Scrappy Boy Stamps, and today we're going to do a tutorial for the Candy House mini album die. Now let's cut our main pieces. First, we're going to cut the main base piece one time. If you were making this into a mini album, this is the piece you would use to cut your front and back covers. Next, you'll cut your stitched base layer. For this project, we'll only cut it once, but you can also use it to make pages for your mini album. The third layer is the body of the house, which we will cut once for our project, and then a second time to gut or cut out some of the paper inside of our main base layer in order to save some of that pretty bronze paper for another project. The house has a roof made of icing, which I cut once, along with an outside framing piece to give your house a cabin or Nordic feel, and a small frame to frame the round window. You can cut multiples, but I cut it once for this project. I'll refer to these next pieces as the porch. You'll need to cut the porch base one time. It also comes with a roof made of icing, which for this project I have cut once as well. And the frame of the door could be cut once if you wanted both pieces to be in the same color, but for this project I have cut this piece twice, so the doorknob and the frame of the door can be two different colors and two different kinds of material. Lastly, for the porch, we'll cut the base of the door, which I cut one time. This long, thin piece gives you swirly icing, which I have cut for this project one time, but does have the option to layer pieces on each end. Lastly, there are two window dies, which I have cut once each to complete the facade of the front of our house. Now on to our optional pieces. First, we have a little gingerbread man die that embosses a cute little face into your gingerbread man. A set of tiny hearts with two sweet little outlines. You could cut them in multiple colors for some contrast and even use them with and without their layering pieces. Next, we have a teeny tiny piece of wrapped candy with an optional layering piece. Apologies for being out of frame. I fix it here in just a second. Depending on your color choice, this could be anything from a little butterscotch to a wrapped up peppermint. If I could use one word for this die set, it would be possibilities. Next, we have the two little swirl pieces. This could be anything from icing to maybe a design feature if you were making something besides a gingerbread house. Next is a die that creates 3 dots, which can be used in a variety of ways, from creating patterns, shaker filler, or even the little round sprinkles, also known as nonpareils. Next, we have 2 cute little lollipops and their optional layering pieces, a right-facing and left-facing swirl. Change up your colors and then add or subtract the layers to create lots of different looks. The next 4 dies create a right-facing and a left-facing candy cane. These are an excellent size, not only to use to decorate your candy house, but also for other seasonal projects as the year goes on. When the holiday season comes around again, I am totally going to take these and some of the other pieces and make an entire red and white candy cane theme house. I can't wait to see how it turns out. I absolutely love these next little pieces. They were so unexpected to me, but they give me so many ideas. 2 little pretzel pieces that could inspire such creativity, even maybe a little Oktoberfest house. And little Hansel and Gretel from the stamp set could definitely be colored to fit that theme. Next, we have our peppermint candy. I've chosen a red base and a white topper, but feel free to reverse that or change up your colors entirely. Up next, we have 2 small and 2 large candy dots. Cut them from glitter paper as I have here to make them look like they're covered in sugar, or switch up your paper choice to something different. I could imagine them as cute little chocolate bonbons or those pastel melt-away mints that you see in the springtime. Last but not least is this die that cuts sprinkles, as we call them in the United States, or hundreds and thousands if you're from somewhere else in the world. Whatever you call them, these are great as embellishments or as filler for your shaker cards. It's time to assemble our house. Since I gutted my base layer and preserved some of that beautiful bronzy paper, I wanted to add a little bit of stability and use some low-tack tape on the back of my base layer. While this isn't strictly necessary, I like that it gives my base layer and my stitch layer an instant hold. Although I wouldn't count on it to be my only form of adhesive, it does allow me to attach them immediately. And after I've applied liquid glue around the outside of the stitch piece, it does hold everything in place, allowing my liquid glue to dry. Again, you can totally skip this step, but if you wanted to have that really nice, pretty glow all around your project, but not waste a lot of specialty paper, this is a great way to do that and still be able to have a piece at the end of the day that's going to hold together and going to be easy to assemble. Everybody knows what it's like to only have that one special piece of paper left that you love, and you want to include it on the project, but you also want to be able to hold some back so that you can include it on other things as well. I love this paper gutting technique. It's a really, really great way to stretch your supplies and really get the most out of them. Next, let's move on to the base of the house. I knew I wanted my gingerbread house to look like a piece of freshly baked gingerbread. And the one thing I know about cookies fresh from the oven is that if you want them to taste good, they have to be brown around the edges. It was super simple. I just took a blending foam and some brown ink and darkened up the edges so that it would look like my gingerbread house had been browned in the oven. This die set in particular can be changed up in so many ways by using different kinds of paper, inking techniques, mixed media, and even color choice. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you a second option with this die set that will absolutely blow your mind. You won't believe I made both with the same set. Once I finish up my inking, I'm going to move all of those supplies to the side and use my liquid glue to attach the body of the house to the base layers. When you're positioning this piece, just make sure that you leave enough room at the top so that the roof of your house has enough room to fit inside the base layer. It's fairly easy to line up, and although I didn't use that piece to make sure, feel free to audition the roof piece before you adhere the base of the house to make sure everything is going to fit perfectly. Now let's move on to adhering the framing and our roof. For these two pieces, I do think it's important to test out the placement before committing with your adhesive. You want to make sure that the framing piece is placed in such a way that the roof piece covers up all of the outside edges. This helps the frame look as though it is firmly a part of the structure of the house and not just a piece that is layered on top. You're also making sure that the roof piece will fit inside the outline. Testing out the pieces first, just make sure that you have an easier time getting a good result when you make that final placement. And as always, using a little liquid adhesive never hurts because it gives you the wiggle room you need in case you need to make a final adjustment. Now, I thought it would be fun to add a little bit of extra texture and a bit of an unusual look to this project by cutting out a lot of my icing elements with glitter foam that had a sticky back. The dies from Scrappy Boy are very high quality, and I find that I can cut things that are a little bit thicker than paper. Don't be afraid to experiment, but as always, try not to force anything through your die cutting machine that doesn't go through fairly easily. You wouldn't want to damage it. I also advise adding a little bit of liquid glue, even if you're working with something that already has sticky on the back. It adds that wiggle room for adjustments and just make sure that your piece is going to stick for the long haul. Next, we're going to move on to the porch pieces. But first, let's put a few details on. I find that the frame to the round window is a great place to add a little bit of color. And although I'm not doing it for this demo, it would be really cute to make this tiny little window have some tiny little shaker bits in it. All you need is a little circle of acetate and to pop it up on some foam adhesive. Next, let's move on to these little loop-de-loops of icing. This piece is designed to fit at the base of the frame and should be placed first so the base of the porch can be laid on top of it. There are even small dots at each end with layering pieces that can be cut and layered in a contrasting color. For this demo, I wanted to show you an alternative way to use this piece in case you wanted to use this border in other ways and you didn't want the dots at each end to show. This piece has 8 loops. Counting over 4 loops from the side will get you to the very center so you can cut the piece in half. Now you can take the 2 shorter pieces and place them at the base of the frame, allowing you to get a different look with the same piece. Don't be afraid to take out your tools and make little edits to your die cuts. This die set is not the boss of you. So get creative. With a little snip here and a little snip there, you can get even more value out of one die set. Once those pieces are laid, I make sure that they're going to be exactly where I want them once my porch piece goes on. And now it's time to give that porch a little bit of browning from the oven. I'm going to use that same technique that I used to put the browning on the outside of the base of the house, which not only gives me that yummy cookie look, but it also will serve as a little bit of contrast between the house and the porch. This is a great technique to use, even if you aren't making a gingerbread house, because it gives you a little bit of separation if you choose to cut the porch piece and the house piece from the same color of cardstock. Then, to add even more dimension, I wanted to use foam adhesive to adhere my porch to the body of my house. But if you're sending this as a card through the mail, feel free to use a flatter adhesive option. The inking around the edges should be enough, even if you want to keep this project flatter so it can go through the mail. Everybody knows it's a bummer to pay a little bit extra just because you couldn't stay away from adding one more layer of foam adhesive. Although if you have an extra forever stamp, sometimes it is worth it. As you're placing the porch, definitely take a look at the bottom of your project to make sure that the bottom of that piece lines up with the bottom line of your house. This should make it easier to place the smaller roof and keep your project nice and neat, if that's what you're going for. Next, we'll place the roof of the porch, which I also cut from glitter foam. And again, I added a little bit of that liquid adhesive just for an insurance policy. As you can see, that liquid adhesive gave me just the wiggle room I needed to adjust my piece and put it exactly where I wanted it. When it comes to adding the door, I recommend placing the base piece first. It's much easier to place the door, lining it up with the bottom of your porch and then making sure that it is centered. Once you have your door centered, it's much easier to put the frame around the door than to place the frame and then try to fit the door inside. Full transparency, I did cut this piece in the white glitter foam, and when I removed the backing, it stretched the piece just a tiny bit. It all worked out in the end, but it's just a reminder when you're using a material you don't use as often, have patience, maybe go a little slower, and don't be afraid to try again. It'll work out in the end. I know you can do it. I believe in you. The final piece of the door is the handle, which cuts out on the same die as the door frame. I went with a dark brown because I wanted mine to be subtle, but feel free to add something like a gem or something with a little more of a sparkle and shine. This is candy after all. Go crazy! The last piece of our basic house assembly is adding the windows. This would be another great place to put a little bit of acetate and turn your plain windows into shaker windows. And if you happen to be window crazy, there is actually space to the right and left of the door for you to put in 2 windows on each side. Although it is a tight fit, it is definitely possible. And there you have your basic gingerbread house. But this is a candy house. You didn't think we were stopping there, did you? The very first thing I knew I wanted to include was these fun candy dots. The shape and size of them immediately reminded me of those gummy candies covered in sugar. I really loved the dimension I got from the glitter foam I used on all of the icing. And since I had all the rainbow colors of foam stocked away, I thought I would pull it out and use it for this perfect project. Don't worry if you don't have the foam though. This could easily be achieved with glitter cardstock instead. It was easy and fairly fast to cut this mini. Each time you run this die through the die cutting machine, you get 2 candies. It only took me 5 passes to get all of the colors that I needed. Even though I focused the large dots at the top and the small ones on the bottom, you could definitely mix and match these or add even more than I did. It's totally up to you. Now, obviously, I couldn't stop here, but even just these made me so happy. When my fingers start tapping, that just means I'm either really happy or I'm thinking very hard. Next, I knew I wanted to add at least something that was peppermint. My design wasn't going to really allow me to use the candy canes like I wanted to originally, but this round peppermint candy was pretty perfect as a faux window in my door. It's so cute! Okay, I'll admit sometimes I have the patience to do certain little, let's say fiddly things that maybe others don't find enjoyable. But if you have the patience, I highly recommend putting your sprinkles all over everywhere you can fit them. Not only did I find this very satisfying as a person who likes small details, I really feel like it fit the theme of icing and sprinkles and candy and all the things that kids love, which I think really fit the Hansel and Gretel theme perfectly. It was also pretty random, so I could just sit and put on my little sprinkles and listen to YouTube videos. It was actually a pretty fun time. Actually, that makes me a little curious. Give me a comment down in the comment section and tell me what you like to do while you're crafting. Do you like to watch something? Listen to your Kindle read to you? Let me know. Once I was done with the sprinkles, it was really starting to come together, but the windows were looking a little boring to me, so I wanted to add some of our small wrapped candies. For the purposes of this demo, I wanted to show how you would take both layers and create little multicolored peppermints. But I actually think there is a ton of possibilities with these little candies. You could ink them in specific ways to turn them into other kinds of candy. You could add some texture with an embossing folder, or even add some details with alcohol markers. I'm also fairly positive that the right and left facing swirls could fit on these candies as well. Honestly, the limit really is your imagination. These cuties were the perfect addition to my windowsills, so I popped them on there with my liquid adhesive, and they look so good, sort of like little bows. I will warn you, once you get started putting candy on this house, it is hard to stop. I'm not kidding. I could probably make these all day in all kinds of different themes and all kinds of different colors. For sure, I'll be pulling this out for other projects just because I have so many other ideas. Before I was done, I wanted to make sure that I included these little icing swirls. They're a nice space filler, and I thought that they really set off the window quite well. And last but not least, I thought it would be very cute to put our little heart up in that round window at the top of the house. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do it this year, but I can totally see how cute this house would be if you did it in all pinks and reds and covered it in hearts and made it a candy house for Valentine's Day. Those little candy dots could be chocolate bonbons. I can't stand it. It would be so cute. Speaking of cute, here is our house all finished, and here is my completed project with the house. I did actually film myself completing the card and all of the coloring that I did with the stamp set. While this video focuses on how to assemble this particular die set, I did post the rest of the process on my channel, and I will link that below. Now, I am really excited to show you the alternative version of this house that I made for an additional sample. Let me tell you, when I realized that I could turn those candy dots upside down and they would make shingles for the house, I was in hocus pocus heaven. Have you ever had an idea that just made everything in your life and your craft room stop because you had to make that? Well, that was me and this card. And not only did this die set work perfectly for a haunted cottage, but there is this gorgeous 6x6 paper release with this Hansel and Gretel collection called Enchanted Forest. They are all gorgeous, and they have kind of a creepy vibe that I definitely can see myself using on Halloween makes later on this year. If you made it this far, thank you so much for joining me today. We love all of you in our little crafty community, and we could not do this without you. If you haven't done so yet, visit scrappyboy.com and see the whole new release for this month. Some of my favorite products we've ever done have been released this month, but I say that every month. There are also links below to our Instagram and our Facebook group. There's inspiration shared on both of those almost every day by my fellow design team members. So make sure you're following us and you're following all of them to see everything they have to share. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you give us a like and a comment. It really helps us out, and we love hearing from you. And if nothing else, remember this: the only good candy houses are made of gingerbread or paper. So if you ever see one in the woods, take a lesson from Hansel and Gretel and run. Thanks, friends. Bye-bye.